You know, most of us had to get creative when it came to staying connected during the pandemic, from social distancing to Zooms. We ended up creating memories in ways we probably never expected.
For some, they turned old school to make this happen, bringing about a renaissance of technology dating all the way back to the 1800s. Wake Up Central's Scott Covert takes us to the ham radio airwaves.
This is K5BXM. Anybody on the frequency?
K5TXX.
All right, K5TXX. How's everything going up there in Danville area?
It's a sound that might take you back to a simpler time. It's the hum of a ham radio that even today still connects people all around the world.
Instead of going to work, all day at work, coming home tired, no time, repeat, they were able to come home and work, and then they had extra time to sit down at their desk and work and do a little ham radio while they're, or learn something or build something.
This old school way of communication allows people to take to the airwaves, connecting from antenna to antenna. It might seem more complicated than a simple Zoom call, so what's the intrigue today of something so old-fashioned?
It's curiosity. It's suspense. You never know when you come in and sit down in front of your radio. You never know what's fixing to happen. Think about those guys in the 1920s that put up a wire and they built a radio. They didn't buy a radio, they built a radio.
While the pandemic brought nationwide lockdowns and travel bans, for ham radio operators like Tim King, the hobby was a first-class ticket to anywhere in the world. Scanning across airwaves, not always knowing who you might get on the other end.
They didn't have social media. Think about those guys. And they talk somewhere from the U.S. to France or U.S. to Italy or something. Think about the emotion of these people standing up and saying, I just talked to Europe. Yeah. Well, that excitement never has ceased. It's still that exciting.
Tim says he's had conversations with people in more than 100 countries, all from his home in West Little Rock. Of the most intriguing places his signal has traveled to?
I've talked to the Ukraine even recently, several times.
And Tim's story isn't unique. Others also taking to the airwaves to bridge the gap created by social distancing and isolation.
Ham radio is kind of resurging. We've had a lot more entry-level folks coming in.
While COVID-19 has fostered a renaissance of radio,
it's not just the pandemic, because it's also, we've had like the freeze in Texas. That put a lot of people out of power for almost a month, some of them. And people are deciding, hey, I need a backup plan.
It's examples such as that, in times of disaster, that the hobby becomes an act of public service.
The tornado we had a few years ago, we were the first to send to relatives the status of their loved ones because they couldn't get through on the cell phone. Cell phones were all jammed. Everybody's trying to call at once. Ham radio still gets through.
Ham radio, a hobby, a service to others, and for many, an old-fashioned cure to the loneliness that has impacted so many in the world.
Cut you off, Scott.
Well, we wanted to hear Scott on the ham radio, but
I want to talk to Scott right now.
Can you give us a reenactment of how that went down?
Yeah, I could. So what I love about the ham radio operators here, it is a hobby. They spend their time, their money, they train, they practice. One, to keep in contact with other folks, and it's just fun for them. You saw Tim, it's a contest. How many countries can I talk to today? But when there's a need, when cell phone towers are jammed after a big event, a tornado, a hurricane, a natural disaster, they're there and they just immediately switch over their skills. And so for many folks, the pandemic, it was tough for us to adjust to isolation and to being away from folks. But for these folks, they've been doing it forever. They're the ultimate social distancers. They've been doing it since the beginning of the hobby.